G'day everyone, welcome to Pay It Forward. Today I have a brand new pattern for you all. Of course it is free, and I have been making beds, quite literally making beds. Now, so many of you did such an amazing job with my little pram that I made to go with Mother Hair in Masterclass. The results from that project were overwhelming. So many of you like the construction side of things. So this is very similar, and it is a beautiful little double bed. I've even created a tiny sleeping kitty there for you, which you can make up. I know that the quilters are going to love this one because I know there's going to be some amazing little tiny bed linen that's going to go on here. But I give you a really simple blueprint of how to put it all together. I'm going to walk you through every step. Your free pattern is in the drop down description box below. Just find that link and you'll be able to print them out. Do have a look at my blurb that I put underneath there that helps you with your printing. Also remember that I include all seam allowances within all of my patterns, so you just have to cut them out exactly on the line. Don't add any seam allowances, particularly with this one. This is put together really simply with just felt and fabrics and some kitchen sponges. So let's get busy creating a beautiful little bed. Okay, so let's run through everything we're going to need to put together this beautiful bed. Now, the main part of your bed is created by using foam sponges. I am using actual kitchen scourers. Now, if you are in Australia, it is the Woolworths pack of essentials 6-pack sponge scourers, heavy duty. So they've got the firm green scrubber and then a dense foam. Don't panic if you can't find those. You can get these in any country and you'll just need to cut them to size to make this size. That size is 14 centimetres by 9.5 centimetres, and that gives you that perfect bed shape. You might just have foam that you can cut to fit. Now remember that I have cut these pieces and cut your sheets that go over them to fit that measurement exactly. That's why you have to stay with that, and of course it fits the rest of the bed. So we've got those. So I use 4 of these if you're using the scourers that are the right size. Put that aside. Now to go over those 2 pieces, we are going to need a couple of things. We're going to need a base for the very bottom of the bed, which is cut from mat board. So it's just picture framing mat board. I suggest you make friends with your local picture framer and he will give you all his little offcuts, which is what I do, and you won't have to pay anything for them. They're just happy to get rid of all those middle pieces that they cut out when they're doing framing. They're useful for so many things. So that is your base. You're going to have a base that we're going to glue on. We also need a base for the other layer, and this one is just stiffened felt. It doesn't have to be stiffened felt, but I like that little bit of hold. You can just add a single piece of felt to go over this one. And then you will need to cut an extra piece of felt, which is going to be glued over the back of the base, just to make it all look nice and tidy. So then we've got our 2 covers for those. We'll call them mattresses. Your bed base mattress and then your top layer. So I've chosen a print, a nice soft print working with all of my colours, and it's just fabric. It doesn't have any interfacing applied to it, just fabric. And I've got that one cut for the sheet, so that little under sheet, and then for the bed base just a gingham there. I'm using flannelette and cotton. So let's now look at our bed head, the actual bed head and the bed end and the sides. This is the construction part of it all. We'll start with the actual bed head. So to create that, we've got our 2 bed heads cut from interfaced felt. You must interface your felt. I'm going for a Queen Anne look, so I'm going to have cream, and on the other side I've got just a deeper cream. It's nice to make it two-toned, it just adds a bit more dimension. So the cream, the off-white, is what we're going to be seeing at the front. The bed will be here. I've done the same with the bed end. So with the bed end, I've got my two pieces, again they're interfaced, and we're going to have the cream showing at the end of the bed here, and then the deeper cream on the inside of the bed. With each of these, you also need a foam filler. So just one foam filler for the bed head, and that is fusible foam. I'm not going to be using the fusible part of it. I'm just using it for its foam properties. We're going to be using clear craft glue to put this all together. So, and then it's just a 5mm craft fusible foam. You've got your pattern templates for those, so you want to cut one for your bed head and one for your bed end. Then we have our side pieces that's going to hold the bed all together, and I've done the same thing again. I've got an outer and an inside in the deeper cream and the lighter cream. So we've got two sides to the bed there, and in each of those we have got our mat board piece and our foam piece to go in between those. They'll be all sandwiched together. Did I mention that you need your mat board? I don't think I did. So also a mat board piece for your bed head and your bed end. So I know it's a lot of pieces, but it all comes together well in the end. Now, as far as detailing your bed head and bed end, you can do whatever you like in the top section of this that we'll be showing here. We're going to have some little pillows here and of course the quilt. But in this section here, you could leave it plain. We're going to be blanket stitching around this. You could leave it plain, or you can add any kind of little embroidery. I'm giving you a simple embroidery of just some little hearts. I love hearts. And I'll just be doing a little design like this, again keeping with my colours, and I'll be appliquing those on, and I'll probably do a little lazy daisy stitch in the large heart. So, and on the bed end, I will do that on the outward facing panel. So those pieces are just felt with fusible webbing applied. You cut those from there. Like I said, you can decorate it any way you like. We then will need a whole lot of pearl threads, embroidery threads. I like to use my extra strong thread for some of my embroidery, and a colour that will frame up the entire bed. In this case, I'm going for an old gold. And the reason for that is the colours of my quilt. So we're then going to be adding a quilt topper, and what you'll need is your two pieces of fabric that you've chosen for that. So this is the top of my quilt. It might be a bit hard to see. It has that little seafoam blue in it, and I love the warmth of the colours, and this colourway put together will be gorgeous. So do pull your detailing from the fabrics that you're using for your quilt, so it all binds it together really well. It's very cohesive. And I'm using flannelette, just cotton flannelette. You can use anything you like. I'm not putting anything in the middle of this quilt. We're just going to sew it together and turn it through, using two colours so that when we fold the quilt back, we're going to get a little bit of this colour on the underneath, which is really nice. So I've just taken my two pieces of fabric and I've drawn my shape on it. You've got your template for that as well. We're going to sew it and then turn it through and cut it out. So very simple. And I will be adding two little pillows, which I'm making in felt. Again, just drawn around your template on your doubled piece of felt. So no interfacing on this one. We're going to stitch around and then cut them out and do a blanket stitch around them. A fair bit of blanket stitching in this project. That's how we put it all together. If you like a bit of hand sewing and embroidery and detailing, you're going to love this project. It's very similar to Mama Hare's pram, and the pram I've given you here on Pay It Forward. It's very similar in putting it together. So if you've managed the pram, and so many of you have done such a beautiful job with that pram, it's why I've been motivated to do this project here. So to put it all together, you're also going to need clear craft glue and some hot glue is a glue gun. Hot glue gun will be really, really handy. So that's about it. Let's get started with actually constructing the sponge part of our bed. So our first step with putting this one together is going to be taking our base, bed base, and then our mattress, and we're going to glue those two together on their longer sides, okay? We're not having a big long bed like this. It's the two long sides glued together. Hot glue is the best for this because it's quick and easy. So I'm going to line them up beautifully and hot glue both of those together first. There we go. I have my sponges hot glued together. Both of them are done. And then on this one, I've gone ahead and hot glued my stiffened felt base onto the base. I've just done that quickly, and you want to glue it onto the scourer side, not on the foam side. So you've got a really nice firm base, and this is your softer mattress part. With the mat board base, I'm actually going to use my clear craft glue. Now, I said about having another piece of felt cut to cover the base. You don't have to cover that base. We're going to pull what is like a fitted sheet around it, and that's the base of the bed that you will never see. But if you are selling this product, I would put a felt base over it first. So totally up to you. So with this, because it's mat board and I can't lift it and lay it into place as I go, as I did with the stiffened felt, I'm going to go ahead and just use my clear craft glue. I'm going to liberally coat that mat board all over, especially on my corners, and also my colour of my mat board, it matches my project anyway, so I really won't need to cover mine up. But as I said, personal choice, but definitely if you are selling this, adding that piece of felt on the base is just a good professional finishing touch for just to save time. I won't be doing that. There we go. So now I'm just going to add that again. You're adding it to the scourer part of your base, your bed base. Push that down nice and flat. Make sure it's all nice and even. And that can sit there and dry. Our next step is that we're going to move ahead and we're going to make the cover sheets for each of these. So this one, the one that has your stiffened felt, that's your top mattress. So whatever colour you want your under fitted sheet to be, that's the one that you choose. Now this is cut, as I said, specifically to size to sit around this mattress. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our piece of fabric, we're going to put right sides together on every corner. You can use a clip or a pin, whatever works best for you. So we're going to pull down every single corner, line it up. We don't interface this fabric because I know I'm the interfacing queen, but in this case we want it to be quite soft and flexible going around that shape. So once you've got those all lined up, you can take this to the machine and you'll just want to stitch down each of them, and you're going to stitch all the way, and it's going to give us a little fitted sheet basically that we're going to pull in around the base. So your seam allowance is just 4mm. So just stitch down, make sure you reinforce your start and finish on each of them. And then you're going to do the same with the cover that you've got for the actual bed base. Do exactly the same, right sides together, and make those corners. You can go ahead and press those seams open and flat. Your sheet cover will sit a lot better if you do that with both of those pieces. Now I've already covered my top mattress. Okay, you can see there I've sewn a running stitch all around that edge once I've settled that into the sheet, and that is my finished top one. Let me show you how I did that. So you're going to take the soft top, and you're going to drop that in and meet up those corners. And you want to make sure that those seams are sitting on right on those corners. Everything will slip in there well until you've got it all in there nice and even and you've kept that lovely shape. So there we go, nicely fitted into those corners. Everything's nice and straight. Then you're just going to take a long double strand of extra strong thread and just sew, starting anywhere. I just start in the middle on one side, and I'm just going to sew a running stitch, and it's only about 3 to 4 millimeters in from the edge, depending on how much your fabric frays, but the purpose is just to pull it in around that base. Leave your tail ends hanging so that we can tie that up. Just make your way all the way around and you get back to your start. Once you have done that, you simply need to tie your first knot, pull on those thread ends and pull that in, making sure that you've still got everything nice and neat and tidy at the top. Adjust the gathers around so they're even, and then knot that off at least 4 times. Snip your thread ends. And I will be adding my piece of felt. I knew I would in the end. I will just glue that in place just with some clear craft glue. And if you are going to add a felt base, do use interfaced felt, so it's that little bit thicker and it will cover everything there, and it just gives you that lovely professional finish. So now you should have your bed base all done, covered. I've added that felt piece on the base, and then you've got your mattress that will sit right on top. Okay, so let's move on to the bed head and the bed end, and the detailing that I'm going to do, I'll walk you through that. So what I've got is my 2 different colours, remember. So the deeper cream is going to be facing the back of the bed. So it's going to sit like this, and you're going to see that headboard in the cream. And with the bed end, the cream is going to be facing outwards with the deeper cream on the inside. So that's the look that we're going for. Okay, so I've already pressed my detailing on my bed end piece, and I'm going to do the same and match it up with the bed head just by removing that fusible webbing backing paper. I am going to take my ruler. I'm going to make sure I get everything lined up. And as I said, you might be doing all sorts of different things here to decorate your bed. I just think the little hearts are a really sweet and easy way to do it, and I am going for that Queen Anne kind of shabby look. So I will take my ruler, make sure everything's lined up and that it's exactly the same as that one. Hot iron and a protective cloth will press those into place. So with all of those pressed into place, I'm ready to stitch them on. Now you certainly can do this on the machine if you want to. I think a project like this, if you give it a lot of love with the hand stitching, it really shows in your finished result. I'm going to be sewing a blanket applique stitch around the edge of each of these hearts, and I'm going to use the contrasting colour around each. So the seafoam blue-green around the pink, and then the pink, I'll be sewing pink. And I'm also using extra strong thread to do my embroidery stitching here, because I just find it doesn't fatigue like some embroidery threads do. I often use extra strong thread for embroidery sewing. Totally up to you. If you are using just stranded cotton embroidery floss, I would use just 2 strands. So I do have a video that shows you how to sew this stitch right here on my channel. You can look that up, but I'll show you a few stitches here. So we come in from behind. There's a knot in the end of my thread, and I've just come right on the edge of that shape. I'm going to keep that thread out the way, and directly below where I've started, I'm keeping my stitches nice and small. I'm going to dive in and bring my needle out through the base fabric right on the edge of the shape, and I'm bringing my needle out through that loop, the thread loop. So then when I pull it, it's got that little stitch going inwards. So I travel just a bit further along keeping my stitches nice and tiny. Again, coming out right on the edge of that shape and through the loop. I'm using my thumb to keep that thread out of the way. Once you've done this stitch a few times, it will be absolutely second nature to you. Use it everywhere. So there you go. I hope you can see that. Those beautiful little stitches that come in, and there's a binding that goes all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch each of those hearts into place on all of those pieces. Then we're going to come back and I'll show you how I do a simple lazy daisy stitch in the large heart there. Okay, so this has my stitching all done. Now what I've done is just that applique stitch around each of the hearts. Then I've gone ahead and added a couple of lazy daisy flowers, one a little bit smaller than the other. Now for this one I've used my pearl thread, which is an 8 ply. And for the other one, I've just used my extra strong thread. And then I've just drawn a couple of stems and covered those just with a stab back stitch. So the way that I do my lazy daisy, I'm going to show you how I do mine. You might have all sorts of different stitches that you want to use there. Remember, this is just only a demonstration. You can do anything you like on yours. First of all, I start with a circle. So I've got a little template here that I use to make my circles, or you could use anything round to draw around. You want to draw your circle to the finished size of the flower that you want, and you want a spot right in the middle. So I'm going to show you a brighter thread on my off-white, and it's slightly bigger so it's easier for you to see. I've shown you all this a few times in a couple of different videos. Everybody does lazy daisy stitch a little bit different. This is how I do mine. So I've got my pearl thread, a single strand. I've got a knot in the end. I'm going to bring my needle through that centre mark. I'm going to pull my thread to the outside. I'm going to go back in to that same hole, and in one motion I'm going to bring my needle out somewhere along that outer circle, and I'm bringing my needle out through the thread loop. There we go. So that creates a petal. What I have to do is anchor that petal in place by just taking one little stitch right close, and that's going to hold that in place. Then we're going to come up again from the centre again, right in the middle, right where we started. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull the thread out of the way, go back into that hole, one motion. I'm going to take my needle through somewhere on that outer line. And again, there's my second petal. You can use this stitch for leaves and all sorts. Very, very handy stitch, and very classic and vintage and retro, sweet little stitch. So again, going to come up from the underneath. I've anchored that stitch in. I'm going to come up from the underneath, from the centre again, and I'm going to keep going. Now you can have those petals really close together, or you can space them apart. Just depends on the look that you're going for. Again, every time coming through that loop, making that petal and then anchoring it in place. And what you will end up with, if you go all the way around, is a beautiful flower shape. So as far as doing your little stems there, I just did a little simple crossover. So always use your heat erasable marker for that sort of thing, and you can add in a couple of stems, leaves, whatever you like. Just stitch straight over those lines. For my stems, I also just used my extra strong thread. So I hope that gives you a good idea. So from here we're going to move on, and we are going to start assembling all of our pieces that make up our bed. So this is the bed head with all of its pieces put together. So there's the foam in the middle. You can see, look at that lovely beveled edge that's going to be facing us. And same stitching, I've just repeated the same thing on the top. This is a side piece that's all put together as well, our sideboard. And you can add embroidery and detailing on there if you like. I haven't. I'm going to have my quilt cover coming down over it, but you certainly can do that. You could add all sorts of trims there. So let me show you how we actually put these together. So for our bed end, we are going to start with our back piece. We pop that down, and then we're going to add, first of all, our cardstock, or our mat board I should say, and I'm going to liberally glue that. That's the first piece to go on. Make sure you get all your corners and edges, and you're going to make sure that that sits right in the centre with the same amount of space all the way around it, because we need room for stitching. There we go, press that one into place. The next piece to go on is our foam. That goes glued on. Glue that on straight over the top, exactly the same as we did this one. Okay, that's our foam in place. It doesn't matter which side of the foam you press into place, because we're not using that fused section anyway. We're just using our glue. So our final piece is the front piece that gets seen, and we're going to glue up the entire back and also all the way around this edge. Don't overdo it, because we are taking our needle through those areas, but it does need to be sealed. Those edges need to be sealed together. So let me get that all glued up nicely. Okay, so lots of lovely glue on there. Now this is what's really important, that we do it this way, because we take our facing piece, the piece that we're going to be seeing from the front, lay that all out and make sure it's perfectly even, and then we bring these edges together, but we're pushing downwards. That's what's giving it that beveled edge from the front, and that's what we're after. Now the glue dries fairly quickly, but you will have to stay with this for a while to make sure that those edges do stay all clamped together. See how I'm creating that lovely rounded shape and making sure that those edges are meeting up. Especially across the top here with that detailing. And it's going to mould around that lovely foam. And again, that's the result that we're looking for. So spend some time sitting with it while that's drying. Doesn't take long, and you find it starts to grip. I wouldn't use clips on it, because it can really indent your felt and change the shape. Just take some time. The warmth of your fingers will start that glue drying as well. You can see that starting to hold there now. And we're going to do exactly the same thing with the side pieces. So with the side piece, you start with your back piece. You're going to glue and add your filler, and then your foam, and then your top side piece, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to bevel that edge. We are now ready to do our stitching on all of our assembly pieces, because we have let that glue dry. So everything is done. Now you can see that I've done my blanket stitching around the edges of most of my pieces. I'm going to show you how to do it on this one. Now the important thing to remember is, when we're putting this together, we're going to be putting it together like this. You've got marks on your pattern templates that show you where to start your blanket stitching. Otherwise, you can just measure it with your side piece there. We just don't want to double up on the blanket stitching on that section. That's where you will join your side piece of your bed. So I've left those open there, each side, and also left the edges open here on these pieces. So I'm taking my 8-ply pearl thread, I've got a knot in the end, and I'm going to be working on the side that's going to be showing. When you're doing a blanket stitch, you always have a better side, and it's the side that is facing you, so work on that side. So to start, I'm going to come in at the back. This is actually not going to be seen, so you could just have the knot sitting there. I just like to hide as many of them as I can, and this is a good tip anyway when you're working in 3D. So I've taken that thread through, and then I've got that knot there. I'm just going to pull that aside, and because it's felt, we can just enlarge that little entry hole there with our awl, and then you can actually pop that knot in, and it's completely invisible there. We can cover those fibres over, and now we're going to sew that blanket stitch. Now this is all quite thick, but it's felt, so it's all still very soft. So a blanket stitch, we take our needle straight through all of those layers and we bring it out through the loop. My stitches are around about 4 millimeters, and it's like a little box square. I travel along, bring my needle through all the layers and out through that loop again, pulling those nice and tight. You want to keep everything nice and even. You can see that's going to give a beautiful binding stitch. I do have, right here on my channel, I have a separate video that shows you how to sew a blanket stitch, but it really is quite simple and it's a fantastic stitch. In fact, it's my favourite stitch. So useful for so many things. So I find that the 8-ply pearl thread is the best because it's still fairly fine, but it's nice and strong. So I'm going to continue to do the top section there, remember, leaving these open, and I will do the same there as I have on this one. And then we can look at actually putting this little bed together. Now with all our blanket stitching done, let's put this little bed together. So I'm just going to start with my bed head and one of my side pieces, and I'm going to be stitching that same blanket stitch through all of the layers to join this on. So I'm going to begin by coming in at the base again, bring my needle out right on that corner. That knot's going to be nicely hidden in there, and I'm going to line that up nice and straight. And I'm going to start first of all with a stitch around the base, pulling that in. I want to really box this corner in. So then one on the corner, right on that corner, keeping that tension up. And then I'm going to start my stitch. Now we are going through all of those layers, but again, it's just felt, so it's very soft and your needle will easily go through that. And I'm simply going to stitch that side piece in place. So you can see there, that little side piece stitched into place, and then that creates like a little hinge effect. So that is beautifully squared up. So now all you need to do is repeat with the other one on the opposite side, and then you're going to add the end piece and you'll have a nice little solid bed frame. So there we go, that has our beautiful little bed frame all done. You can see there's some movement in there, but everything is nicely bound at the edges. Everything should look really neat and tidy. So basically all you need to do is just drop in your bed base and your top mattress, and you've got the perfect little bed. Now you can actually glue both of those together, the top and the base mattress. You can do that with clear craft glue or hot glue, and you can, if you wish, actually add some glue to the base here. That's how you would do it. You wouldn't add it to this. You would add some glue across the base there to slip that first one in, and that'll just hold that there. I actually won't even glue it in. I just like that it just sits nice and snug in that frame, and that's no problem at all. The other thing that you can do is you could just sew a couple of stitches along the base here, and it will stop that base falling through. So whatever works for you, and depending on the fabrics that you're using. But that is our gorgeous little bed. Now let's make the little quilt and pillows that go on top. So for me, I'm just making a really simple little two-piece, basically a quilt topper. So I've put my two chosen fabrics together. Remember that I've got a contrasting fabric on the underside so that when I pull that cover back, I can get a nice strip of colour. I have left an opening at the end there, and I'm just going to take this and I'm going to sew directly on the line on my machine, leaving this section open. Then I will cut it out, just leaving about a 5mm seam allowance. You can see there that I've trimmed that all away. Go ahead and snip the corners off each corner. It means your little quilt will turn through better. And I'm going to now turn that through, push out all of those corners, and I'm going to give that a good press. And as I do so, I'm going to turn that opening edge under as well. Once I've done that and it's all pressed nice and flat, I can take it back to my machine, and then I'll be able to turn that edge under and just sew a top stitch really close to the edge just to close that opening. So I've given that a lovely press and I've closed that opening at the base, and you can see there that I have simply pressed mine into place, pulled the sides in, measuring the top part of the mattress, and folded that top edge over, so we've got that lovely contrasting colour and then our beautiful floral. Press that nicely, and then you'll find that it's just going to sit beautifully over the bed, and the covers are going to sit down. Now you may be doing something completely different for the quilt, and I know that all of you clever quilters out there will be making some beautiful little miniature quilts for this bed, but I think that that's a fantastic simple way to make a simple coverlet. So now we're going to make the two little pillows. You could just make one large one if you wanted to. I like putting two there. I like to think this is a little double bed. And I have my two pieces of felt together. It's just felt, nothing added to that. And I've drawn around my templates. Again, I'm leaving an opening, and I'm going to stitch directly on that line with a matching thread. Once you have stitched around those little pillows, you then can go ahead and cut them out. Now we are not turning these through. We're actually going to stuff them, and then we're going to sew a little decorative blanket stitch around the edge, and that will also close that opening. So you need to leave just a little hem around the edge of about 4mm. That's just about right to give it a nice sort of a little ruffle. Simple as that. And then we can go ahead and get ourselves just a little tiny bit of polyester filling. And I have my forceps ready, and I'm just going to take those forceps, just make sure that it's open, and I'm just going to tuck in that filling right up into the corners just to create those nice little pillows. Now you can plump them right out if you want, depending on how you like your pillows, I guess. I don't want mine to sit up too high, but just fill them out to as full as you like. Make sure you get into each of those corners to lift that out, and then you simply go around that edge with a blanket stitch, the same as we've done right throughout our project. And you can use, of course, you can bring in a contrasting colour, bring in something that works with all of your colours there, and then we will have our two little pillows done. Okay, so this is our beautiful bed all put together with the bedding on. I will give you a much better look at this at the end, but you can see there with the little quilt, the pillows, absolutely gorgeous. Now, I have designed this one and kept in mind that you can use any of my little babies to actually sleep in this bed. So let's pop those in. These little babies are really quick and easy to make in felt. They've got the little arms that tuck over the top of things, so they work really well with this little bed. You can tuck them in there. Now I have in my playlist of mama and babies, there's quite a few that you can choose from there. I've got puppies, we've got a little pig, we've got the little bear, kitty, we've also got even a baby raccoon. So a few there to choose from, and they just look so gorgeous in here. The other thing that I wanted to give you was a little sleeping kitty, so more of a realistic sort of a kitty to sleep on the bed there. So that's what I'm going to show you now, just a little bonus extra with this pattern. You might have other ideas of who's going to sleep in there, but certainly you've got all of those available to you in my list. So let's have a look at what you're going to need to put together a very simple little felt kitty. I'm going for black and white because it's really going to stand out on my colours. You can certainly make yours any colour you like. I'm very partial to black and white cats though. So just a few little pieces here. Now all of these pieces are cut from felt with fusible webbing applied. Now the reason for the fusible webbing isn't that we're going to be fusing it in any way. We're actually going to be sewing it up. We're using the fusible webbing on the back because it makes it so much easier to trace and cut out very little tiny pieces like this. And it also does just stabilise the felt a little bit, so it's not disintegrating when we're sewing it. So we've got our two body pieces. What's going to happen is we're going to sew those together. We're going to be adding the head right in here. I've got a pattern for a sleepy kitty that is made up just like this, only it's larger than that, of course. I'm adding a little heart to the back so that it's just breaking up that black colour and giving a little bit of white in there, and also a tail tip. So that again is breaking up that colour. We then have the face, and this is the little muzzle area. We will sew a very simple nose and mouth and sleeping eyes, and that will be our little kitty. Very, very small, but the proportions are correct for the bed. So that's all your pieces. We're going to be using some clear craft glue this time to actually glue these pieces on rather than sew them on because they're so tiny, and we also don't want to be fusing them on with the hot iron, so because they won't stay permanent, but with glue they will. And remember, this is a tiny little kitty that's quite ornamental. It's perfectly suitable to use a little bit of glue for this project. So that's the first thing I am going to do. I am going to glue those pieces into place. So I have my clear craft glue. I'm going to use a wooden skewer. I'm going to add a little bit of clear craft glue onto my cardboard here and just use the tip, and I will simply smear some craft glue all over the back of each of my pieces and glue them into place. Now the little heart needs to sit right about here on the back end. Check with the head that you're not going to be covering it up, and give yourself enough room because we're going to be sewing a seam around there. Do the same with the little tail, glue that into place on the end, and then you can see with the face, again, we're going to be sewing a seam all the way around that head, so give yourself some room here. I would say that's about 3 millimeters from the base that you want to glue that in place. Make sure it's nice and centered. Not too much glue, but make sure all of the edges are really well pressed down. Get those done, and then we will come back and start our sewing. So now I have all of those pieces glued into place. We can put the two head pieces aside and we are going to start on making the body. Now you can see where I've added that heart and the little tail tip. You have marks on your pattern template that show you this is where we leave an opening. We're not turning this through, so we put our right sides together. But the first thing you need to do, there's also a mark on your pattern template that shows you where to do this. We are going to sew on the machine from this corner here. We're going to sew just a line in almost to that heart. It's basically straight across, and that's just going to separate the tail from the body, and when we add some filling it'll help hold it down at the front. It'll make sense when we do it. So it's just a stitching line. Make sure you back and forth on your start and finish just before the heart. As I said, I've got it drawn on your pattern template, and of course you'll use a colour to match the colour of your kitty. So there you can see that I've stitched straight through, just a line straight across almost to that heart, and that separated the tail from the rest of the body. Now you need to take your extra strong thread, and we have a knot in the end. It's a single strand. I've got my marks here on the inside, and I'm going to come in just between the layers of the felt, bring my needle out right on that mark, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew all the way around until I get back to the other mark on the other side, sewing a blanket stitch. It's just that it's a really, really tiny blanket stitch, and you can probably hardly even see what I'm doing here because of the black thread, but it's the same blanket stitch that we've used throughout the project. It's just really small and fine, and keep those stitches to about 1 to 2 millimeters, as small as you can, making sure that it's still catching all the fabric on both sides, because we are going to add some filling to this. So keep your stitches nice and tiny and nice and neat. You will obviously use a matching thread colour to whatever colour your kitty is. So that's going to bind it beautifully. I'm going to travel all the way around. I'm going to switch to white when I do the tail section, switch back to black, and then come around until I get to the other mark. And then I will leave the thread on, my black thread and needle on, because I'm going to leave it on so that I can close that opening as soon as we've added that filling. I now have that body all stitched with my blanket stitch, and as I said, I've left my needle and thread in place. I'm now going to add a little bit of filling to this body, and first of all I'm going to take my little forceps and just make sure that that whole area is opened up and down into the tail, because remember we've got that heat and bond on the back. Sometimes it can be a little bit sticky, so I've just opened that up, and then I'm going to take just the tiniest bit of stuffing with those same forceps, and I'm going to tuck that into first of all the tail area, just to define that tail area. If you can get a hold of little forceps like this, they're so handy. And really pack that in. Hard to see there, but it gives lovely definition between the body and the tail. And then I'm just going to go ahead and stuff the rest of the body, and I'm going to be focusing on the top half. We want the top section to be filled out nice and full, so that when we add the head, it's going to sit in the right position. So I will fill the whole body section, but I will concentrate on most of my bulk being in this top area. Once I've got that all filled, I'm going to take my wool felting needle, and I will just tuck all of those fibres in nicely, and then I'm just going to finish my blanket stitching to close that opening. So that completes the little body. You can see that it's filled, it's that lovely little eclipse shape, and it's fuller at the top than at the bottom. We can put that one aside, and now we're going to start to work on the head. So the first thing we're going to do with the head is I've taken my heat erasable marker and I've just drawn just a little cross on that muzzle section there, and we are going to just sew a little cross stitch straight over the top. Just cover those 2 stitches, and I'm using my extra strong thread in a pink for this. I want that pink to tie in with the rest of my colours. Let me get that stitched into place. So there you can see, I hope you can see that little tiny cross stitched mouth, and I've just gone in with my permanent marker and just filled in a soft brown just across the top of that nose section there. It really is just a tiny little bit that you need to do. It's just giving an impression of a face there. Now we are going to put these 2 wrong sides together of the head, and we're going to sew starting at the base of the ear here. We're going to sew that same blanket stitch all the way around until we come back to the other side of the head. It's just this top section of the head that we leave open, and again I'll leave my needle and thread on so that I can then stuff the head a little and then close the opening. So with that head sewn, my next step is simply to do the same thing as we did with the body. I'm going to just first of all get in there and open that out, and I'm just going to add a little bit of stuffing into the head. You won't get much in there, but you can certainly tuck it in to fill that out. You want it to have some volume. Fill out all around that lower edge. Do the same thing with your wool felting needle and tuck those fibres in at the top, and when you've got it all neat and tidy, you will go ahead and finish closing that opening. But you need enough stuffing in there that we're going to sew 2 little sleepy eyes, and we want there to be enough stuffing that it pulls in and creates a little bit of an indentation there. You can then go ahead and just from behind, I just come in from behind with a little bit of white thread because I'm making a black and white cat and we need to be able to see the thread. It's very hard to see, but it's just a simple stitch from behind, and I've stitched a little diagonal stitch across for each eye. And you really don't want anything loud and starey because it's so tiny. It needs to just be just an indication of something there. And then we've got that little look of a little sleeping kitty. So next is we're just going to add that head to the body. So the head needs to sit and tuck in just over that tail there. We're going to pull it in from behind. So get a good idea of where that is. You're going to take your needle in from behind, and I've got a doubled strand of extra strong thread here, and I'm going to leave my tail ends hanging. So I've come through, then I'm going to go to the back of the head and I'm going to take a stitch across, straight across, nice and parallel. Then we're going to go back into the body again, just a little way across, and we're going to bring those threads out, and we're going to check that we've got the head in the right position. Make sure nothing's twisted as you're pulling on those threads. And then check that it's all good and it's all in the right spot. Really pull on those threads from behind. Lots of pressure, and knot that off at least 4 times before you snip those thread ends. If you haven't got the head in the right position, it's really easy just to pull that off and start over. And that completes our beautiful little bed with our little kitty in place there, and that little kitty can sleep anywhere. But it is really a lovely finishing touch, and I'm sure you're going to coordinate your colours beautifully. I really love the idea of the little kitty there. So a little bit small and fiddly, but you can see end result is just beautiful. As I said, you can certainly embellish the side panels of your bed if you want to. But all in all, just a really gorgeous little project. And don't forget all of these guys. So these are my puppies. We've got the bear and we've got the little kitty. And as I said, there's also a raccoon and a little baby pig that you can certainly tuck into the bed there. And if you've enjoyed this project, I have a very similar project in style, and that is our lovely pram, put together in much the same way. So I certainly hope you have enjoyed every bit of making our gorgeous little bed. So thank you all for joining me. I hope to see a whole lot of different colours and designs in those quilts on that little bed. And also remember that I've made mine up in the cream. You can certainly make it up to look like an old timber bed. So somebody please do that for me. I don't have time, so I'll rely on you guys to do that for me. So share your creations on our Facebook page. You can come along there, join our Facebook page. I will put the link down below. Also, if anybody is looking to join Masterclass, go right ahead and click on the link that's down there below as well. Looking forward to lots of amazing designs with the little beds. I will be designing more of this type of style of thing as well for you all, because I just have so much fun doing it. And it is a real break for me from the normal just straight up sewing. So I hope you enjoyed it too. Let me know in the comments if you did. And in the meantime, everybody have a fantastic creative week. Remember to pay all those good things forward. Until next time, it is hooroo from me.